Ah. Oh my gosh. What a journey it has been. Now, today, I'm not being very ambitious. I'm not giving you any, small assignments or anything. I just want to talk a little bit about the final documenting sources in your paragraphs because, as I've been making these videos and as I've been teaching, it's really hard to keep track of what I've done. And I've realized it would be nigh on near impossible to go back and watch all of the lectures I've posted, right? I'm like, did I talk about parenthetical citations? I feel like I did, but I just have this absolute nagging feeling that I didn't. So I was like, you know what? Let's cover the bases. Let's go ahead and talk about it so that I can be absolutely sure. And when I lay in bed after this semester is done, I'm not going to feel like I forgot to talk about that with you guys. Because here's the thing. Parenthetical citations, when you take the data point that you've dug out of your sources, which I'm pretty sure I've talked about the data points, right? I've talked about quoting. I've talked about paraphrasing. You need to indicate inside your paragraph where that information came from. This is also a really good idea for using one source in your paragraph, and for using only one source really keeps this stuff very clear and simple in your writing. The more you have to kind of like introduce and document sources within a single paragraph, the more confusing it gets. Now, this is something that gets obviously a lot more complicated as writing becomes more detailed and more intricate. So when you go and get your associate's degree, when you go and you start writing your longer pieces, especially when you go to graduate school, this becomes a little bit more of a pain in the butt because, you start having to put multiple sources into paragraphs. So it is something that does come up, but not till a lot later. Now, this used to be a very complicated issue because with if you were using books, when you would throw out your data point, when you would throw out your ideas or your quotes or your paraphrase, you would have to indicate the author and the page number in a parenthetical citation that would be placed at the end of the sentence. So it would be like parentheses, author's last name, comma, page number, right? And all of this was basically delivered with the purpose of helping the reader go back and find your material so that they could interact with it, participate in whatever conversation you were trying to jump into. MLA, basically the Poindexters who tell us how to write papers, have kind of gone back and forth on this for internet writing and for using sources off of the web. Now, the best way to go and answer these questions and to see a guide on how to do this would be to go to a sample would be the Online Writing Lab at Purdue. They have a really good section on MLA and how to write the MLA paper. One of the best pieces of advice I give students, I think, is find an MLA sample paper. Sample papers are a really cool way to get a very general idea of what your paper is supposed to look like. And usually you'll see examples of how documentation within the paragraphs is supposed to look like within that sample paper. But the funny thing is a lot of people don't realize just how often MLA updates and how funky things are when you track what MLA does from year to year. It used to be that citing a source from the web was a gigantic pain, mainly because we didn't really have a nice correlation between like the page number and finding the area of the quote on a website, right? So one of the ways that they used to do this is you would actually list the paragraph number that the information you were citing came from. So you would see like the author's name in the citation and then the paragraph number. And I'm sure you guys who have been on the web, which I'm sure all of you guys are probably getting most of your research from the web in some form or fashion. Going and counting all those paragraphs is a gigantic, this is my word of the day. It's a gigantic pain to go and count up all those paragraphs. that is just not a fun thing to do in a lot of instances, because web writing can become, really, really dense. But that was the way that we used to do it when I was in like graduate school. Now they've kind of let go of that. And for most blogs or news articles, you don't have to put the paragraph number anymore. They kind of just sort of let go of it. Now, the main piece of advice I would give you for your parenthetical citations, and there is one exception to this, I'll tell you in a minute. The main piece of advice I would give you would be to simply just mention the author's name in the paragraph itself. Tell me where the thing came from, which is pretty much what I told you to do anyway. So I think I've covered this basis, but I want you guys to see how important this is. If you mention the author's name in the text, you actually remove the requirement to cite that parenthetically. You don't have to give me the author's name at the end of the sentence. You've already mentioned him in the text. It's also a really good reason for the beginning classes to keep those data points isolated from each other, so you don't have a whole bunch of quotes fighting for attention in a single paragraph. It's a real nightmare to do that. And like I said in the beginning of the video, you don't really have to do that until you're a lot farther along in the writing game. I mean, that's something that comes up much more when you're doing really long, gigantic research projects. Like for me, that issue came up a few times when I was writing my book at Georgia Southern. So in any case, there's rules that dictate that, but I don't see any reason to go that far into depth with it. You don't even have to worry about page numbers or paragraph numbers unless it's Galileo. If you're citing something from Galileo, a lot of times those page numbers will be there. So at the end of your sentence, just put the page number in the parentheses, indicating at what spot in the journal the page numbers came from. That's a pretty good kind of general rule. But like I said, the best way to handle something like this is to really go on Purdue OWL, the online writing lab, and look at that sample paper, look at those general rules. Because the specifics of format in research, this is something that I used to get really obsessed about, but I don't anymore, because even in the course of my career, I've been teaching since, 2008. And you'd be surprised how often these rules change and how often MLA doubles back on its policies. And, it makes sense because the internet is a changing ecosphere. Things are constantly in flux, and we come up with better ways to do research notations and stuff like that. So in any case, that's my quick crash course on how to do your parenthetical citations. It's actually quite easy if you're taking most of your material online, because you just have to mention the author's name. And if you want to be really good, mention where it came from. If you were Galileo source, just parentheses at the end of the sentence with the page number on it. If you guys have any questions at all, I know we're running out of time. I know this thing is due now. This video is a little ridiculous. So if I see a lot of mistakes in this part of your writing, I'm not going to come in with a hatchet on you, right? As long as you're, trying to document where your sources came from, that's what's most important to me. So in any case, keep working on those papers. I'm excited to read them when they do finally come in. It feels like a Burger King day. What's your favorite? You know what? For a little bit more of a participation point opportunity here at the end, if you're lacking in those participation, I ain't going back and editing it. You can forget that. For participation points, tell me about your favorite fast food restaurant in one of the forums. I'll see it. I'll give you some points. Give me a paragraph. For me, it's Popeyes. That chicken sandwich, I have dreams about it. Anyway, hope things are going well for you guys at the end of the semester. I'm going to end this video now.